بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين أجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف وجعلنا من أعوانه وأنصاره. Inshallah, we start our second session on jurisprudential rules or maxims, al-Qawa'id al-Fiqhiyyah, based on the book Durus-un Tamhidiyyah fi al-Qawa'id al-Fiqhiyyah by Sheikh Mohammad Baqi Irvani. As we remember, we said the very first rule is la tu'ad, qa'idatu la tu'ad, which is based on an authentic hadith from Imam Baqir alayhi salam, in which Imam alayhi salam says, Salat is not repeated unless for 5 issues. If there is a problem in ruku or sujood or tahur or in waqt or qibla, it will be repeated, otherwise not. So we mentioned that this would not include someone who intentionally doesn't make other things, other than these 5. For example, intentionally would not recite. Recitation is not one of those 5, but Salam Alaikum. For someone who forgets, not someone who intentionally doesn't say recitation. This is what we discussed already. The next thing is, what about someone who doesn't know the ruling? The most obvious case is someone who forgets, nasi, those who are forgetful. Forgets to say his hamd, forgets to say his, for example, surah or tasbihat arba'a, for example. But what about someone who didn't know, he was jahil, and after salat he came to know that he must have said, for example, surah. So hal takhtassu bin nasi, is this qaida exclusive to nasi, to someone who forgets, or it can be extended to jahil as well? And you know that, of course, jahil has also 2 types. We have to discuss both types. We have jahil qasir and we have jahil muqassir. Jahil qasir is someone who has excuse. For example, one type of jahil qasir is the one who had no doubt. غير المتردد. He didn't have any question in his mind. Sometimes you have a question and you don't inquire. Sometimes it didn't occur to him that such a thing might be an issue. Okay? So maybe, for example, a person didn't think that one particular subject, for example, should not be carried when he is praying. For example, something from an animal which is not eaten, like, for example, a piece of hair of cat. He didn't know and didn't occur to him that this might be an issue. So this is jahil qasir. But sometimes is muqassir. He should have inquired and he was able to find out. So first, let's see whether it includes jahil or not, and then if it includes which type of jahil, both of them or one of them. The author says, certainly nasi is included, the one who forgets. Then some people have said like Mirzai Shirazi rahmatullah alayh, that it would not include Jahil. And the way they have argued is this. This is a little bit technical, so please pay attention so that you understand. Yes.
Which page are you on?
In Arabic is 25-26.
57.
So his argument is this. According to Taqrirat al-Salat of Mirzai Shirazi, which is compiled by his student Kazemi, he has such argument. This is a little bit complicated, so please pay attention. Mirzai Shirazi wants to say that someone who is Jahil has few obligations, which are addressing him. For example, i'ta bis-surah. You must bring surah. I'ta bil-hamd. You must bring hamd. And this person who is Jahil has not implemented, has not obeyed those obligations. So the general obligation for Salat, in his words, can be analyzed to smaller obligations. Yeah, so you have one command, but this one command can be analyzed to 10, 15 commands, that everything that you have to bring in Salat. And the one who is Jahil has not implemented one or more of them, so he has to bring them. He has to repeat them Salat. But the one who is Nasi, La Tu'ad, can be helping him, can come to him, because when he was Nasi, that command could not apply to him, because Nasi has no taklif. So then La Tu'ad only comes and says you don't need to repeat. But the author says this doesn't seem to be right, because whether someone is Jahil or Nasi, both initial commands and La Tu'ad can apply to them. Because you cannot say ahkam are only for the people who know them. Yeah? So this distinction is not accepted. We believe that both the one who forgets and the one who doesn't know, they had responsibility to do everything as it is in Allah's knowledge and expressed in Sharia. But the thing is that Allah has given them exemption. If apart from few items, everything else is fine, those who forget, they have excuse, and those who don't forget also may be included. The only thing is that, Assalamu alaikum, we have to discuss whether Jahil Muqassir is also included or only Jahil Qasir. But you cannot totally dismiss Jahil and say Jahil is like Ahmed. Ahmed, we said, cannot use Qa'idiyya La Tu'ad. But the Jahil seems to be the same as Nasi. It's included. So, let's be more specific. After accepting that hadith includes someone who is ignorant, the question is, هل هو خاص بالجاهل القاصر أو يعم المقصر? Is it only for Qasir who has excuse? Or it includes Qasir and Muqassir, both of them. Muqassir means the one who had some problem. He was not careful enough. Yeah, this is muqassir. Muqassir is guilty. Qasir means he's excused. Okay? Maybe he didn't have access. Maybe he didn't even think that this can be an issue. It didn't occur to him as a question. The author says, Ayatollah Khu'i rahmatullah alayh had the idea that it only includes jahil qasir, not muqassir. Because this hadith of la tu'ad seems to be expressed for the people who are ma'zur, who are excused. Jahil muqassir is not excused. You say muqassir means he's guilty. He had question and he was able to understand the ruling. He didn't bother about it. So if he fails to bring some of the wajibat because he didn't inquire and he had access and he was aware that there is such a question, Ayatollah Khu'i says the hadith would not include him. Hadith only includes jahil qasir. But Sheikh Irvani says there seems to be no difference between qasir and muqassir. لا فرق بين المقصر والقاصر. Why? He says because after the problem is known, after they have realized that they have missed doing something which was wajib, then what difference is between them? Before, Jahil Qasir had certainty that what he's doing is okay. But now both of them have certainty that they have failed doing something. So he says it seems that there is no difference between them. The only thing he wants to say is that we have a kind of ijma. We have a kind of consensus that Jahil Muqassir is not excused. Therefore, although hadith includes any kind of Jahil, we exclude Jahil Muqassir because we have an external reason. We have ijma. Ijma that Muqassir cannot be forgiven if he fails to do something which is wajib. Okay? So the result is the same as what Ayatollah Khu'i says, but technically it's different. Ayatollah Khu'i wants to say that the hadith would not include Jahil Muqassir in the first place. He says it includes, but then it's excluded. So it's not takhassus, it is takhsis. It is excluded by ijma. The next issue is when we said Ahmed, someone who intentionally doesn't do some of wajibat, is excluded, you have to remember that there are cases that someone might be Ahmed, might be doing something intentionally, but still has excuse. And the hadith of la tu'ad can include. For example, look at this. If he makes niyyah of saying his salat behind an imam that he thought is adil, yeah, لو اقتدى بشخص باعتقاد انه عادل, he had this impression that this person is adil, So he started salat, he said his salat behind him, and as a result, he didn't recite hamd and surah. Okay? ترك قراءة الحمد والسورة. ثم اتضح. After some time, salat is finished, the same day or after some days, he realized that this person was not adil. He was committing sin and he was not aware. And this sin is not a sin that he committed after salat, that you say, okay, maybe he was adil. No, he realizes that even before he had problem with his adala. Okay? So, here, you cannot say hadith does not include it because he deliberately didn't say his hamd and surah. We say, although he didn't do hamd and surah deliberately, but this deliberation, it doesn't make him amid. Because he didn't recite hamd and surah thinking that he is adil. Do you understand? So still he is considered as someone who has excuse. You cannot say, no, he decided not to say hamd and surah. We say, yes, he decided not to say hamd and surah, but that was based on the assumption that Imam is adil. It's different from someone who is doing, for example, furada and doesn't recite hamd and surah. Yeah? If someone is reciting furada and doesn't say hamd and surah, he cannot use hadith la tu'ad. We say, my ruku and sujood and tahur and waqt and qibla are okay. But a person who didn't recite hamd and surah because he thought that this is salatul jama'ah and he had the impression that this imam is adil, everything was okay, he had done everything okay, he made investigation, whatever was needed, later he proved to be wrong. So still we consider this person as someone who is excused.
Just one clarification. We praying the Jamaat. When the Imam is praying, you're not supposed to read anything so they doesn't get excused. You're supposed to read zikr. So
if you don't hear Imam, you can do some zikr. If you don't hear Imam. It's not necessary, but you can. But if you hear Imam, it's better to keep silent. Just hear Imam. Another case. A person is in his furada prayer. In the second rak'ah, what is the duty? You should recite hamd and surah. If you are furada, you have to recite hamd and surah. But now, the problem is, he thought he is in the third rak'ah. And he recited tasbihat arba'. Okay? So, can we say he is excused or not? It's not that he forgot to say hamd and surah. He deliberately didn't do hamd and surah. But this deliberation was because of he thought he is in the third rak'ah. And he recited tasbihat arba'. Okay? لو كان المكلف يصلي منفردا فأتى في الركعة الثانية بالتسبيحات. The person who is praying, okay, was praying alone. In the second rak'ah, he brought tasbihat instead of hamd and surah بتخيل أنها الركعة الثالثة. He was thinking that it is third rak'ah. Mistakenly didn't say hamd and surah. Okay, we say this is also excused. قاعدة لا تعاد includes even such person. Don't say he is amid. He is not amid because he thought that he is in the third rak'ah. Yes, he intentionally recited tasbihat, but based on a wrong idea that he thought he is the third rak'ah. Is it clear? Another example. someone said his prayer behind Imam who was actually not saying Salatul Fajr. He was doing, for example, Nafilatul Fajr, or he was doing Nafilatul Zuhr. So he thought he is doing Fariza, but he was doing Nafila. He didn't say his Hamd and Surah intentionally. But again, we say it's not a problem, because he had the impression that that person is doing Fariza, and based on that he didn't do. If he himself knew that he is not doing Fariza, he would not have, made the intention of following him as Jama'ah. Is it clear? Yes? So, in all these cases, we say hadith of la tu'ad would include. So far the conclusion is this: any person who forgets or who didn't know, okay, but was excused in ignorance, jahil qasir, would be not in need of repeating if one wajib of salat is failed to be brought, except those 5. Of course, we have other things that inshallah we mention, just so far, based on the hadith. Another question: is this rule applicable to people who want to understand their duties after salat is already finished? Is it for someone who said his salat and then realized a problem? Or even if you are in the salat and you realize that you have missed something in the previous rak'ah, you can say la tu'adu salat. You understand? So is it for faragh, means completion after completion, or even in the process of saying your salat if you doubt? Is it clear? So the one which is definitely included, and the hadith includes, is after finishing salat. Okay? You finish salat, then you realize you didn't do hamd and surah, you didn't recite hamd and surah. As-salatu la tu'ad. But when it is in the middle, some people said it's not included, because they say, we don't accept, but first I explain what they say. They say, when we say as-salatu la tu'ad, it means that there has been already a salat, and then we say it's not repeated. But when someone is in middle, it's not included, because he has not had salat yet. He has not had salat yet. But the author says this is not a good argument, because even when someone is in the middle of the salat, still we can say, for example, don't make your salat void. Yeah? Don't break your salat. You don't need to say after he finishes salat. So even in the middle of salat, you can say, this is salat. Is it clear? So if someone is in the, for example, second rak'ah of salat, third rak'ah, we can say, don't break your salat. So this is not a good point to say that because before finishing salat there is no salat, so this hadith can only be said for the people who have already finished salat. So we believe that whether someone has already finished salat and realizes that he has some problem, or someone who is in the middle of salat and realizes that he has some problem with respect to the things which have already passed. not something that he can sort it out now. For example, if I know that I didn't say Hamdan Surah and I am not yet into Ruku, I say it. But it was before, for example, it was previous Rak'ah. What can I do now? It's the same as realizing after Salat. Is it clear? The next issue. You see how one hadith can have lots of discussions. Is this about someone who fails to bring wajib, or it includes also someone who does extra? Is it for both? Some people have had the idea that it only includes the people who have failed to bring wajib. So it is naqisa. When there is a kind of shortcoming in bringing, for example, he didn't say hamd, he didn't say surah. Okay? He didn't say tashahhud, he didn't say salam. But we say it doesn't make difference whether he didn't bring wajib or he did it twice. Mistakenly, he did it twice. In both cases, it includes. Especially if you look at the argument that we had at the end. What was the argument at the end? As sunnah cannot break farida. لا تنقض السنن الفرائض. لا تنقض السنن الفرائض. It can be extra sunnah or minus one sunnah. It doesn't make difference. Because if you want to say with doing one more tashahhud, for example, your salat is void and you have to repeat it. So you have broken fara'id with sunnah. Is it clear? So this rule includes both cases of failing to bring a wajib or bringing extra. Clear? Yes.
So now, when if you're praying and you realize that you forgot to, let's say, surah on second rak'ah.
Okay.
And then you decide in your own mind that you want to break the salah and do it again, so you want to do it properly. Would that be in order? Break the salah?
No, you should not break.
Never break the salah.
No. If the salat is okay, you must not break it. Salat al-wajib.
We know, we're in the house, we know now you taught us. But if something, I was praying like this for 10 days ago, for example.
Yeah.
And if at that time I forgot, which I didn't know this rule,
So,
then I don't want to do it properly.
so if it is jahil mughasir, has no excuse. It's a act of disobedience to pray and then break it in the middle. Unless the prayer by itself is void. For example, in the middle of prayer, you realize you have no wuzu. This is not breaking prayer. This is already void. Yes, no existence. But if everything is okay, for example, you started doubt, and then instead of applying the ruling of doubt, you say, I do it again. No. You cannot break. Some people have said that with respect to ruku and sujood, there is a possibility of, for example, extra or minus. But with respect to qibla or waqt or tahur, there is no possibility of extra. It's only minus. So everything then has to be about minus. We say no. 3 of them can only be either there or not, but 2 of them can be extra or minus. Why you are limiting hadith? Because of 3 of them, and say all of them should be only interpreted by considering only minus. Basically, the hadith is telling us whenever there is a problem in salat, and you have managed to complete these 5 things, the rest seems to be okay if you were excused. If you were not doing deliberately, or if you were not, for example, muqassir, jahil muqassir. So whether someone does one more or doesn't do at all recitation, for example, he's excused. Yes.
But now if you're leading a Jamaat, for example,
Yeah.
you got 2 or 3 people, and then you do your second rak'ah. After the second sujood, instead of doing a tashahhud, you forget it and you get up. When somebody in the congregation reminds you then by saying Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah,
Yeah.
can the Imam actually sit down again?
Yes.
He can sit down again.
Yeah. Now, another question that someone asked last session on Monday, and I said the answer briefly, but I said we will discuss it later. The question is why some other important obligatory parts of Salat, which we call them arkan, are not mentioned. Because we have also niyyah, takbiratul ihram. Why they are not mentioned? Because if someone doesn't have niyyah and later he realizes, you cannot say la tu'addu salat. Or if someone doesn't have takbiratul ihram. The answer is, if someone doesn't have niyyah, he has not done anything. You cannot say la tu'addu salat. There has been no salat. Because salat without niyyah is not salat. Okay? And also takbiratul ihram is the beginning of salat. As I said Monday, if you have no takbiratul ihram, you have not yet started salat.
Sheikh, that wasn't my question. My question was, you do the niyat and you start reciting Alhamd, for example. And then you do the ruku and all that stuff. And then in the second rak'ah, you go, oh my God, I didn't start by doing takbiratul ihram. That situation where you forget.
Anyway, if you haven't said takbiratul ihram, if you know that you haven't said takbiratul ihram, you have not started yet. You have not started yet. So, therefore, it's very important to know that these 5 things are not the only things that if you don't do them, you have to do salat again. These are 5 things for the people whose salat has already started. There are ways that maybe we say you have not yet started your salat. If you don't have niyyah, you have not yet started salat. If you don't have takbiratul ihram, you have not yet started takbiratul ihram. Yes.
Now, maybe I know the answer, but if you have doubt whether you've done takbiratul ihram, do you have to start and say yes, we have done it?
No, it's not istisab. If you have doubt, and this doubt is after you have already entered another, then this is another rule, which is tajawuz, qa'idatul tajawuz. After you go to another part, or after you finish salat, qa'idatul faragh. That's another thing. That's for doubt. But if you are sure that you didn't do it, then you cannot. If you are clever, you ask one more question. You say, okay, with respect to takbiratul ihram and niyyah, yes. But there is one thing else that you may question. And that is qiyam muttasil bil ruku. Because that is also rukn. Standing just before going to ruku. Why that is not mentioned? And the author says, it seems that is part of ruku'. If you don't have that, you don't have ruku'. In other words, this is something which has been taken for granted. When we say, if you do ruku' and sujood and tahur and waqt and qibla, everything is alright. It is for granted that someone who does ruku' means he was standing and going to ruku'. You cannot imagine someone who starts salat in ruku'. Yeah? So, this is why it's not mentioned. The person must be very, forgetful or lost his mind that starts salat in ruku. Okay. The next question. If you remember, we said in the beginning, we said لا تعاد الصلاة إلا من خمسة الطهور والوقت والقبلة والركوع والسجود. What is this tuhur? Is this tuhur at-tuhur in the sense of having wudu, or at-tuhur in the sense of being clean? Because as you know, we have at-tahara al-hadathiyya with respect to hadath, and we have at-tahara with respect to khabath. Are you familiar with this? So, when my body, for example, was bleeding and is now najas, okay, what type of tahara I lack? Al-khabathiyya, yani at-tahara with respect to lacking khabath, dirty, of course ritual dirtiness. But if I have been sleeping and I have now woken up, I lack tahara of hadathiyya, okay, because noam is hadath, and you have hadath asghar, hadath akbar, yes. So sometimes you need wuzu, sometimes you need ghusl. So the question is, هل المقصود بالطهور خصوص الطهارة الحدثية أو ما يعم الطهارة الخبثية? Is this only for having wuzu, or it's for both of them? What does it mean? It means if I have wuzu, but I have forgotten that part of my body was najis or part of my dress was najis, is it okay? La tu'ad includes that? Or I have to have both of them, otherwise I have to repeat salat. So is la tu'ad helping with someone who doesn't have wuzu? No, definitely. Someone who has no wuzu, definitely no help. But someone who has wuzu, but it was najis, part of his body or dress was najas, can we say he has tuhur, the tuhur which is in the hadith, and this is not a problem? Or tuhur requires this as well? Is it clear? So the minimum is what? When there is no wuzu, this is the problem. You have to have wuzu. There is no way to compromise about wuzu. Even if you have forgotten, it's not an excuse to say, I forgot to make wuzu. If you know that you didn't say salat with wuzu, it's void. We cannot compromise about it. So you have to make sure that you have your wuzu. But if you have forgotten that your dress was najis, what about that? He says, it seems that at least this is mujmal. This is not very clear whether it includes both or only one of them. And therefore you have to do ihtiyat. But if we look at the argument at the end, and the issue was to consider which wajib is farida, which wajib is sunnah, means which wajib is legislated in the Quran, which wajib is legislated in the hadith. If you use that argument, it can be very helpful, because that illah should be there. Question: which type of tahara is mentioned in the Quran? Tahara for wuzu is mentioned in the Quran. إِذَا قُمْتُمْ إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ فَاغْسِلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ. But tahara with respect to the body and clothes for salat is not mentioned in the Quran. Maybe you say, what about that ayah, وَثِيَابَكَ فَطَهِّرْ? Says, no, that is not about salat. That is about cleanliness. A Muslim should have tidy and clean dress. It's not a ritual najasa, the issue of ritual najasa. So, based on that, we can say, if someone, of course, these are scholarly discussions. It has no practical value. Everyone should refer to his marja. Okay? But based on a scholarly discussion, and marja has to make the decision, we say, if someone forgets to make wuzu, and after salat, or in the middle of salat, remembers, no benefit. He has to repeat. La tu'ad would not help him. But if someone forgets that his hand was najas, without, of course, harming his wuzu, okay, it was another part of the hand, or became najas after wuzu. So wuzu is there, but his hand is najas. He forgot it. Or part of his clothes is najas. He forgot it. After salat he remembers. Qa'idi la tu'ad helps him. Okay? Because this type of tahara is not legislated in the Quran. And we can use the istidlal, the reasoning at the end of hadith to say that la tanqudu sunan al-fara'id. The next question. Is this rule of la tu'ad helping with respect to someone who didn't avoid an obstacle? Because we have three things. You are, mashallah, now getting, to high levels. So we have three things. Ajza, shurut, and mawani. Yeah? Salat has parts, has conditions, and has mawani, obstacles. With respect to shart, you have to observe it, like direction. Direction is not a part, it's a condition. Is it clear? You know it in fiqh, yeah? Tahara is a condition, is not a part. Yeah? Ruku, sujud, qara is part. Mane is obstacle, something that you have to avoid. For example, not to be in someone's land, someone's property, without their permission. We can say this is qasb, is a mane. You have to avoid it. Anyway, the question is, or for example, you shouldn't laugh when you are praying. You shouldn't laugh. Laughing is a mane. So the question is, can we use qa'idiyya la tu'ad to say that if someone forgets and he laughs, or unintentionally laughs, but he has ruku and sujud and waqt and tahara, other things are there? The answer is yes. It's not a problem. Because, again, he has all the things which are legislated in the Quran, he has all the fara'id, and this is not a problem. The end is, he mentions few examples. In the English translation, I think you have only 5 questions. In the Arabic is 11 questions, and these are for exercise. You can do yourself mubahasa. For example, if someone has said Salatul Asha before Maghrib, I mentioned for you one of them. Imagine a person in the right time of Isha. Not, for example, before time comes, or not in the time which is exclusive for Maghrib. Because the first 3 rak'ah, the time for the first 3 rak'ah is exclusive to Maghrib. But suppose 5 minutes after Maghrib, he had the impression that he has said his Maghrib. Because he was doing, for example, Salatul Qaza, whatever, he thought he has done his Maghrib. He does Isha. After finishing Isha, he remembers he has not done Maghrib. We know that as long as we remember, we should do Maghrib first, then Isha. But this person didn't remember. Is it a problem? There is no problem. Because he has observed waqt. You cannot say he has not observed waqt. Waqt is there, tahur is there, qibla is there, ruku is there, sujood is there. The only thing is that the order, Qa'ida la tu'ad, includes such people. He does only Maghrib. Did you realize? He does Maghrib. He doesn't need to do both of them. He was thinking that he has done Maghrib. So he only said Isha. But Isha in its right time. Okay, everything is okay. Just he has forgotten to do Maghrib. After completing Isha, he realizes that he has to do Maghrib. It's just enough to do Maghrib. He doesn't need to do both. No. No, there is still time. There is still time. If there is no time, he does Qaza of Maghrib only. If there is no time. If there is time, just Ada of Maghrib. You don't need to repeat Isha. According to Qa'idiyya, La Tu'ad. You have this also in Risale, but anyway, always you check your marja. We are doing a scholarly discussion. Okay, Alhamdulillah, we finished this. Inshallah, next session we have two interesting rules, very much beneficial. Qa'idatul tajawuz, qa'idatul faragh. These, inshallah, two rules we study next Monday. Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen. Sorry, what did you say?